Silently, the Galactic warriors moved. Through the chilly night air, their complete activation of cloaking shields, they moved with assurance and without being noticed. Like shadows that are invisible to the naked sight, the technology that these warriors had stolen, destroying many species throughout galaxies, because they believed that Earth would not distinct and unimpressive conquest, they dismissed humanity with contempt. It is so outdated in terms of technology that just touched the surface of what they learned to use Earth's military radar eons ago. Ineffective in comparison to their sophisticated systems, anything more than toys in terms of their armaments in the cosmic warriors' eyes for these hooded entities that had created this makes invisibility a flawless science. They found the assignment to be almost boring. Not a conflict, but a practice in declaring their superiority. They accompanied silent haughtiness, confident in their position as supreme beings who think there is no power on they could be touched by Earth. As they broke into the defense bases and played with their surroundings, changing slightly items and turning on sensors, departing slight indications to create Earth's defenders, they found it amusing to envisage the humming and scurrying around, unsure of what to do. A flicker here, a slight distortion there, sufficient to remind everyone of for these warriors. It was vulnerability. A game they were aware that, should the need arise, might destroy every soldier on the base within a few minutes. They delighted in their own dominance, and attention focused on a brief survey of the planet, cloaked and essentially undetectable. They felt unbeatable. But as they got closer to target zones, an unusual change occurred. Tension began to rise in the atmosphere. One of the warriors initially felt a prickling sensation. Consciousness, a sense of being observed. Dismissed it as unimportant. But the feeling others' uneasiness wouldn't go gone quickly. Sensed it too, but they wouldn't acknowledge it. How could anyone see it aloud after all? Them as one warrior made a small movement. Leaving shape, a high-pitched, the silence was broken by a single gunshot. Unlike anything they had previously heard, there was a sharp clang reverberating through the gloomy. And suddenly one of their comrades fell apart, and panic struck the gathering. Mixture of bewilderment and incredulity about how they may have cloaking technologies. Their armor was impregnable and flawless. Nevertheless, one human bullet had sliced for a little period. They stood through all of that. At least not yet. It wasn't fear that frozen. It was the realization of a danger. They couldn't understand the bark of their leader directives in an attempt to restore authority, but the KN was shocked by their confidence. They looked around in quest of, seeking indications of the assailant, but discovered nothing that should have been possible for a person to witness them, much less hit with such. They activated one by one with precision. Their scanning apparatuses in search of any erratic movement or heat signatures. However, there was nothing but blackness. With the sound of that lone bullet echoing, the air grew heavy with quiet. The warriors had been trained to be colder. Read the battlefield to identify subtle variations in the atmosphere, and something was distinct here, as though the Earth was alerting them and advising them to depart in order to drop this mission before their leader attempted to brush, but it was too late. It off as an anomaly or lucky shot, but he felt in his heart that this was something otherwise. He signaled by changing his stance. Others to disperse. They would find and remove this concealed danger. They swiftly went back to advancing. Every sense has weapons ready. Heightened minutes went by, and as they had started to think that another shot rang after the menace had disappeared. Out, and a second warrior dropped, this time, quietly into the night. The panic was actually spreading swiftly through the group. They muttered in low voices, wondering how this was taking place. Could a human being identify them? To see past their masking as though it lacked the sensation of as invincibility started to wane and was replaced with a nagging feeling of vulnerability for the first time. The Galactic warriors sensed the strange weight of fear. In an odd manner, a single human sniper had succeeded in unthinkable. He had caused them to doubt their domination. They had never faced an adversary, the person who could make them feel like prey. Hunted creatures as part of their own objective, attempted to reorganize in order to create a defensive posture. Yet each motion felt revealed every possible hiding place. Location for this invisible adversary. Their technology that they previously thought was unmatched appeared to be ineffective. They couldn't find him or follow his movements. And whenever they believed they were safe, another shot showed them to be mistaken. Desperately, they congregated and examined their next. A realization started to sink in. This wasn't merely a person with a fortune. This was someone who had been trained, who had a deeper understanding of them than he was aware of. The Galactic soldiers were shook when passing past it became evident that this was a gloomy, silent base, was not their rapid conquest. As anticipated, One of their group members plummeted to the bullet from the sniper striking the earth. The realization spread silently. This wasn't luck among them, rather, it was method, and someone was aware of the precise location to attack. They sensed an increasing amount of tension, an unfamiliar sensation for a force that's used to unquestionably dominating. They pulled back to regroup and reevaluate their leader, looking over the terrain with they tried to make sense of height and focus. Of this invisible danger, being aware that each moment they were exposed may imply that they triggered another death. Sophisticated sensors, thermal detectors, everything that would enable them to capture evidence of this invisible adversary. But the readings were void. It seemed as though a ghost was their assailant. Moving with, they lacked the ability and accuracy to expected the leader to indicate a fresh structure, one intended for the highest protection and visibility. They relocated as a close-knit group that scans each direction. Their guns are prepared, but with. They felt that their every move was being monitored, as if this sharpshooter was able to predict their actions prior to their creation. For the Galactic warriors were a disturbing and uncommon encounter. The sniper's concealed weakness, he stood his position somewhere in the darkness. Unnoticed and uncompromising, every image was a thoughtful statement that is not only a blow but an example of how to manage the galaxy warriors who are so used to intimidating now. Their adversaries sensed that power turned against them, as though the regulations had altered, as though their technology cloaking had no meaning. They continued to proceed, carefully and gently striving to take up the little clue as to where this sniper could be heard in every sound. They were set on by distant movement. Edge, they started to mutter among themselves, arguing over how to deal with this, their leader's attempt to keep them, persistently reminding them of their goal, although they were superior. The remarks seemed their self-esteem was undermined by the persistent quiet and the possibility of an additional attack. One warrior made an effort to once more, in the hopes that their gadgets had merely failed to notice something the first time. However, the readings remained blank. Their frustration increased once they encountered innumerable species. But none has managed to circumvent their technology in this manner. Using as time went on, the ideas became more stable. They were interacting with a person who understood just what they faced and how to quickly counteract it. With a feint, they noticed a movement that flickered in the background. They turned, arms lifted, prepared to attack, but when they shot, and all that was left was an vacant area where they believed that perhaps the sniper was a distraction. Shrewd move to attract them, and it worked. They felt vulnerable and exposed. They were struck with an unexpected realization. This individual was unable to only observe them, but they were utilizing their own impulses working against them. Their leader demanded a retreat to a different location. In a location that provided greater protection, they acted swiftly in an effort to outsmart the sniper by altering course. But even while they withdrew, the sensation of being seen lingering. Becoming more powerful, it was as though there was always a sniper nearby. Looking forward to their every action, for this was the first time the Galactic warriors' awful reality. They were accustomed to the hunters, but in this case they were pursued by each warrior started with a single invisible human. To reconsider their presumptions, believed that conquering Earth was an easy task. Modest mission, they now questioned whether they had undervalued the contributions of humanity. Toughness, or if this sniper was just an anomaly, a single person who disregarded everything they knew. They was unable to determine. But as they remained silent and vigilant while crouching low, the pressure increased, but it didn't matter anymore. The tension within the group increased with each passing second. They were proficient elite fighters among their ranks, but their training against this opponent feeling unworthy. They started to realize that this sniper was more familiar with the terrain than. They did so by taking advantage of it, attracting them and making contact when they tried one at the last minute. Last tactic, placing a fake in an attempt to lure the sniper out of concealment. They observed the place where they waited, put it in a trained and ready-to-use weapon, continued, and as they started to, I believe it worked because another shot went off. Out from behind, not at the decoy, eliminating a second warrior. The sniper had carried out their plan, guiding them again. As the collective diminished, they experienced the weight of failure, force a sensation on them that they never before encountered by a species, so convinced that they are better than the object. The leader's lack of vulnerability was bitter. The once confident voice now carried a hint of uncertainty as he gave the final few would wait to defend themselves. Wishing the sniper would come forward, although they knew in their hearts that this was most likely, the sniper went unnoticed and the unstoppable force was at work. Softly from the Galactic shadows, warriors were disturbed and their numbers diminished. Resolved, realized that they were now dealing with this is not just a human soldier. Was someone who disregarded their anticipations of power. They were unable to lessen your understanding of the galactic warriors in quantity and recalculated their strategies aimed at neutralizing the shooter who had broken their assurance. Their leader issued an instant implementation of sophisticated monitoring drones, each outfitted with thermal imaging and motion sensors, create a network of detection in the region. Fields encompassing all potential angles. If somehow this sniper had gotten by their technology, he wouldn't avoid using the combined power of their gadgets. But while scanning the warriors with the drone battled to get rid of a spooky feeling that the sniper foresaw each and every move, they modified their arrangement, enclosing one another, leaving no room unprotected. Every warrior increased their alertness, understanding that every error could, as they were leaving, the air felt heavy with an invisible danger and unseen presence holding them on by applying pressure. Edge in spite of the drones, even though there was no technology, so the sniper had returned to the natural environment as silent and concealed as before. All of a sudden, the silence was broken by a piercing gunfire. It was a warrior who dropped it. Crisp, well-timed, precise blow. The group was rocked with shock. Even in their drones were unable to find any movement. They re-examined all they was aware of their technological inquiries. Way P had been slipped by this sniper's sensors with each calculated strike. The sniper demonstrated his proficiency, requiring the galactic warriors to acknowledge the limitations of their once trusted tools. In a last-ditch effort, they resorted to countermeasures created. They freed them for infiltration missions. Canisters of smoke to form barriers, believing it could interfere with the sniper's sight line. But the sniper reacts displayed no hesitation and kept his silence. Attack, despite their best efforts. As the smoke cleared, another fallen protect the other warriors. Angry and uneasy, I recognized the sniper was teasing them about adjusting, with a comfort they hadn't expected as their numbers decreased throughout the galaxy. Warriors encountered a strange feeling of fear. Their leader gave them instructions. More compact formations, but the tactical edge they thought they had disappeared with each positional change. Every effort to thwart the sniper's techniques that appeared to be futile in nature. An adversary who foresaw their answers before they were even acquainted with them themselves, compelled to go on the defense. The warriors adopted desperate postures, using high-frequency sound waves made to find any opponents that may be hiding. However, the sound waves came back empty. Sounds as though the sniper has disappeared. Completely, the warriors started to see that he wasn't merely evasive, he was systematically removing their defenses layer by layer. He appeared in every shot. To examine them, dissecting their tactics as though they were instinctive, they were left struggling to make ends meet. A leader's voice revealing a hint of irritation as he yelled orders. He commanded his remaining soldiers to retreat, return and reorganize in an attempt to entice the trapping a sniper by multiplying their attempts to seem weak, but the sniper remained concealed. Observing the galactic warriors had never come across an adversary who was able to avoid them but undermine their strategies with such. The sniper's approach was precise, unrelenting, his patience unwavering. After several hours, the galactic warriors, the sniper felt worn out and cautious, encircling them from all sides. They had relied heavily on technology, their power in innumerable conflicts, but in contrast to this concealed marksman, it had become each high-tech company's weakness. Every attempt to reach him was unsuccessful. Attempt strengthened his psychological hold on them. In a last-ditch effort to support him, they set up a fictitious target and mimicry of their own in the hopes of capture the sniper's interest and attract. They crouched in the open. Quiet weapons practiced on the dummy, awaiting the smallest indication of they sensed the tension in the sniper's position. Increase every second, enhancing their expectation, followed by a shot, but it didn't strike the decoy, but rather a warrior removing him while concealed in cover. The sniper's merciless accuracy once further exposed by their strategy, preserving his control over the current state of the galactic warriors. Diminished to a small group, were compelled to acknowledge that this person was outside of he had stripped away all of his control. The advantage they thought they had, transforming their conceit and technology, their leader's trust against them, had failed. His plan is pointless. Versus a rival who had outmatched them at every opportunity. The rest warriors, weighed down by exhaustion and anxiety, realized they didn't have much hope left as they retreated, going back to what they believed to be a safer position. But they discovered the sniper's ability went beyond simply the skill of marksmanship, was one of psychological warfare, as a means of doubting that they are being pursued for the warriors of the galaxy. This sharpshooter symbolized an uncompromising power, and they were ensnared in a conflict they weren't ready to confront. They held their situations that are frantically attempting to stay a certain amount of control, while in reality they realized how they were exceeded their alleged invincibility. Broken the sniper had demonstrated their technology was insufficient, but they had depressed them, leaving them with a feeling of vulnerability that they had never previously known. They were no longer targets in a mission, but fighters on a mission game they were unable to win against an enemy who disregarded everything they thought the Galactic combatants were this time. Down to their final tactic, the survivors were gathered by their leader and developed a strategy to catch the sniper. Combining all of the resources that are left, the goal was to simply get rid of this before more lives are lost. The unseen human threat were lost, so they used all that remained. Advanced technology producing an intricate grid of detection that included a large radius. Their captain described particular roles for every warrior with the hopes of compel the sniper to come forward, even if their numbers are declining. Disciplined as they adhered to these directions to the warrior's letter triggered their final defensive maneuvers. Erecting a wall around where they are of electromagnetic and sonic barriers pulses in the event that the sniper came near them would be aware that they had retracted their firearms. Instructing them on all possible vantage range of point quiet was only interrupted by their text low hum while scanning watched and waited. The plan was perfect in principle, intended to stop any live thing from moving. They positioned each component of apparatus carefully covering any potential holes the grid was established, and now they awaited the springtime trap. Went by without making any noise or movement, just the burden of their own respiration. Started to question whether the sniper had ultimately fled, although caution prevented them from established in spite of the absence of any when they were sighted. They maintained their formation. Hesitant to down their defenses quite yet, the tension in the standoff started to wear on them as stress increased over time. Constructed. Each warrior experienced the strain of the uncertainty and the sniper's terror, observing covertly despite their defenses in position as their patience started to when a slight disturbance appeared on one of their sensors, a tiny irregularity, hardly noticeable, but plenty to start them on edge. The commander signaled silently, instructing them to change positions and get ready to meet on the disruption. They modified their aim and taut their nerves. Moments passed while waiting for a sign, and afterward, a second sensor flickered, but this time spent on the other side of their. Confusion over formation swept across the warriors, recalibrating and realizing that decoys were being used by the sniper. The sniper was interfering with their readings. They are tampering with their technologies. Keeping them in suspense, they realized that he was purposefully luring them out with the grid that they constructed against them. Annoyance in each effort to identifying him only made another using a well-planned technique. They attempted to counter reconfiguring their sensors, but every modification worked in his favor. Their boss yelled at them to adjust. His remaining warriors are being directed to give up feeling dependent and make the switch to visually monitor the warriors they tried to see in the low light. Looking for even the smallest movement, but the sniper's devious methods caused him to. They couldn't refute that it was untraceable. He was now demolishing their method by method, as though reading one of the warriors is in their thoughts. Resolved to put an end to this broken formation, moving in the direction of a dark spot where he thought the sniper might be concealed, but a single shot echoed as he went. Destroying him, and the other warriors maintained their positions after realizing that they had been drawn in yet. The sniper had foreseen another trap. Using their frustration against them, their leader's fingers clenched as he realized the unwavering advantage of the snipers. They had taken control of the trap they had set as the sharpshooter took advantage of every weakness in their plan. He proceeded with a methodical accuracy that went against their technology, as though he was aware of every vulnerability. They were now aware that each and every when their methods changed, he adjusted more quickly. Each failed to forecast their next action. Try to reaffirm the terrifying reality that he was not just adept but also unrelenting. Hunter, who was unforgiving of the leaders, the voice was low and strained. Requesting that the final warriors remain steady, they retreated in search of shelter in an attempt to reassemble, but the sniper appeared to expect even this to keep his command of the circumstance, and his strategies were brutal and methodical in their attire. Taking them out without ever disclosing himself. Role for the Galactic warriors now. Their only objective was to survive. Giving up on the idea of winning, they hearts thumping, crouching low, waiting for unavoidably. They were unable to see him, were unable to hear him, but they sensed his existence of an unseen force pressing down on them. Each motion was carefully considered, each shot. Positioned there, the sniper was no longer a to them. He was a soldier, an unstoppable power overcoming fear. Depriving them of the motivation to battle. In the quiet that ensued, realized that their mission had not succeeded. Leader, after they have established their supremacy, realized the heartbreaking truth of his failure. had never faced such an adversary. A person whose ability defied rationality made their technology ineffective. The warriors from the galaxy who had never heard of the harsh edge of terror was now tasted. They arrived to conquer, but discovered themselves. Not through the use of numbers, but by one resolute human with just a few warriors. A sharpshooter still, they retreated, fleeing from the field they were broken, but not through by the sniper force, but via mastery, via a relentless determination that surpassed each strategy they came up with as they retreated, sensing the pressure of their loss a reminder of their dominance. Was not perfect, they had been defeated. Not by technology or guns, but by a mind they were unable to anticipate, a skill they unable to oppose. The Galactic, this mission's warriors, had shifted from they fought a battle to survive. Lost long before they became aware that I had the sniper stayed out of sight, observing retreat. A quiet triumph against a military that had never seen the loss of expedition was unsuccessful, yet the recollection of this person would always be a warning sign. In their thoughts, a foe who had changed their perspective on strength, that demonstrated the absence of actual power in quantity. But in galactic mastery, there are presently very few warriors left. Many survivors encountered an indisputable reality. They had changed from being hunters to the hunted. This mission had evolved into an unrelenting, their only choice is to play the survival game. Was the leader retreat once a figure? Brimming with confidence, I felt the burden, signifying failure, indicating his remaining in order to retreat. The warriors moved with warn that their once firm determination has now become a fragmented memory that leaves the battlefield that had turned into their trap. The remaining members of their group approached their extraction point, while preserving each feeling acutely aware that any error could mean destruction. As they handled it was unpleasant to be silent around them. Increasing the volume of each distant sound shadow that appeared to change, they were aware of somewhere. The sniper was still keeping watch. Unseen, but all to demonstrate his accuracy and expertise, had demonstrated indestructible force. Them to give up all traces of their conceit. They had arrived ready to overwhelm, but instead discovered themselves methodically devoid of all advantage when they are extracted. The survivors created a last perimeter. The leader turned on an emergency signal that demands quick action suddenly. They sensed the strain in the atmosphere and knowledge that even this, the final step, wasn't always mobility. In every effort to locate safety, was troubled by the realization that the sniper might still be waiting outside. For the last strike in their last, they waited for their moments on this pitch. Transportation that had been postponed because the sudden turmoil in which every survivor found themselves as they surveyed, they had their firearms ready. The quietness in their surroundings increased, converting the seconds to minutes in endless wait that exerted pressure on ultimately the extraction ship. Emerged as a beacon of light in the distance. Escape, although they were all still cautious. The potential for an invisible shot hung over them, serving as a reminder of their susceptibility. When they entered the Bader, the extraction ship issued the order. However, for instant takeoff, his voice steady carried a touch of fatigue and disgrace. A glaring divergence from the confidence he had initially exuded of this once routine mission. Conquest had become a terrifying conflict with a single-person enemy who had independently disassembled their troops across the rising. They each remained silent, lost in their own thoughts. The warrior, analyzing their relentless pursuit, just fled for creatures who had never. This withdrawal was more than a known defeat. Rather than a failure, it was an epiphany that recalling the sniper's pro-ruling served as a reminder to them that they did not have absolute supremacy. Thought they had encountered a rival who disregarded their technology numbers and all of their strategies that lowered them to terrified survivors after they ruptured via the atmosphere of Earth. The leader passed over a report to the transmission from command center was brief. But the forces that protected clear Earth could not be determined using traditional. He described the sniper's skill standards. His unparalleled capacity for transparency, the relentless, and their concealing psychological harm that he caused to their group. This interaction had changed the view of Earth, from a simple conquering to a cautious position. Possible danger that should have received more. The command center recognized the importance of the report. With some skepticism and prudence, they had expected to succeed. Anticipating just slight opposition at this time, they heard a depressing story about failing a one individual who had outwitted an. Some members of the elite force disobeyed their knowledge of combat. The head of Galactic warriors are cognizant of his report's influence. Would have been he felt a mix of relief and shame. Saved the lives of his colleagues, but at the price of admitting their susceptibility as the transmission completed. The remaining warriors exchanged a tacit comprehension that they had been defeated by a single individual rather than an army, who had altered the trajectory of their mission. This loss wasn't one that they would overlook the fact that the sniper had not only delivered a message to preserve Earth, something that would reverberate across the ranks of the remembrance of his galactic warriors with accuracy. His unwavering determination would remind them that they had to deal with an enemy they had never faced before, previously faced when the leader moved farther away from Earth and took a last look back at the Earth that appeared modest and unpretentious from this distance. But he was suddenly more aware of Earth-retained defenders with their abilities greatly underestimates and that something changed with realization. This event is crucial to him, would be a watershed, not only for, in addition to him, each and every galactic warrior who had lived, they would have gone back to their command center is not as successful warriors, but as conquerors, humbled by and the only person who had surpassed them at each step. The extraction ship took them home in a ship of survivors. Instead of each warrior carried the scars more than the victors of this conflict, not in bodily injuries, but in the consciousness of a power that had made them helpless. With this sniper's legacy would silently follow them. Evidence of Earth's surprising power. They had discovered that being better was not solely determined by technology, and occasionally a single talented opponent could cause the foundation of an empire's faith in their homeland world. That the warriors would have to go through debriefing. A comprehensive analysis of each tactical setback they experienced came across their leaders, would examine the information in order to comprehend how an elite team had been defeated by humans. But the intangible would not be captured by any analysis. Fear, the feeling that you are being pursued, that the sniper had sensed, that each survivor had shown to them that they were not unbeatable. That failing to give an opponent enough credit could lead to the galactic warriors' demise. This mission would go down in history as a pivotal moment in a tale of surprise, a loss that would spread across their rankings. They would go back to their training grounds with greater caution, conscious of their own limitations. Strength Earth was once written off as a simple target, would turn into a location designated by recollection of a single sniper who had the rules of engagement have been revised. The extraction ship finished its voyage. The return of the galactic warriors to as they disembarked their world, everybody sensed the lingering presence of the sniper, an impression that would endure long after they departed from Earth. They had encountered a foe who had demonstrated them that bravery, accuracy, and endurance may overcome even the most sophisticated technology. Ultimately, they came back not as they used to be warriors, but as the humbling's mark on survivors, understanding that real power was found in ability that is not based on numbers,